7 months ago today, we went to the negotiating table with Metrolinx. April 7th, we started these negotiations. Our number one concern was job protections, contracting out of our jobs. As of last night, we still had reached no resolution on it. We didn't want to be here. We thought we were closer than what we were, and our members spoke. We had a vote last week on a proposal that Metrolinx had given us. 81% turned it down. Our workers aren't happy, and they don't want to be here, but we're here, and we're here in solidarity, hoping that they'll come back to the table and get us back to work. We have our International Vice President, Manny Sforza, who will gladly share some words.
Good morning, everyone. Manny Sforza, International Vice President with the Amalgamated Transit Union. The reason I'm here today is to give everybody a detailed, minute-by-minute description of what actually happened this past weekend. ATU did not want to go on strike. And let me be clear, this is a strike that should have never happened. And I'm going to explain why. We've been at the table for months and there's been a number of problems. A lot of times they want to give us verbal commitments, and we all know collective agreements aren't written on verbal agreements. This past Saturday, late afternoon, both parties met. We agreed on 3 items that were going to form the framework to get a collective agreement before the deadline. Both parties agreed. We come back the next morning with revisions to 3 items. ATU was responsible for 1, Metrolinx was responsible for 2. I was extremely hopeful when I left Saturday that we were going to reach an agreement. We met Sunday morning, 13 hours before a strike deadline. We came back with our work done. Metrolinx sat at the table 13 hours before a deadline and proposed 4 more weeks of consultation with our members. Outrageous. In all my years doing collective agreements, I have never seen anything like that. They told us we didn't have a good gauge of our membership. I think based on today's turnout, we have a really good gauge on our membership. So at that point, I suggested to Metrolinx that within 4 hours, they should be able to come back with an agreement on these 3 items. At the end of the day, we want to avoid a strike. Let me be perfectly clear. Metrolinx had no intention of coming to a deal. At 3:55, mediator came into the room and said Metrolinx had not prepared the document and they needed more time and they wanted to meet today. This is 8 hours before a strike deadline. Now, I'm sure you can all imagine, as a negotiator, I was quite upset. But I did not want to go on strike. So I suggested to the mediator that within 2 hours, they come back with the deal. Because we still need some time to go back and forth and figure out the small details before the deadline. They came back 5 minutes later and said, we cannot reach that deadline. You have to come back tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, that is why we are on strike today. And we are announcing ATU will be filing a complaint with the Ministry of Labor against Metrolinx for bad faith bargaining because it was crystal clear to us they did not want to reach an agreement. So you have to ask yourselves, why would a corporation like Metrolinx put its workers on strike? Well, I think the answer's just down the street. The answer's just down the street. Now, if this government is going to hold unions responsible for going on strike, then I think corporations like Metrolinx should also be held responsible for putting workers out on strike. Now, these are pretty outlandish allegations. But I want to remind everybody, but at the table for the last 5 sessions was a neutral party, an appointed mediator. Now, the Labor Board could conduct an investigation, but I think it needs to go deeper than that. I think this provincial government needs to have an inquiry to what really happened at the bargaining table. And we will cooperate fully because we know what the truth is. We should not be here today. There should have been a deal done tomorrow. You may ask yourselves, why did they do this? Well, I think when the Premier speaks in a little while, you'll all know the answer why we were put out on strike. We'll be happy to answer questions.
Look, I just want to say one final thing, before we move on, and we'll take some questions from the media. What we're seeing today is indicative of what this province is doing. This government has a mandate. We're seeing it with the CUPE strike. We're seeing it with the workers' unrest and the labor disruptions in this province. And this government needs to react and give labor what it rightfully deserves. And that's fair collective bargaining and not threaten us and bully with the notwithstanding clause. Whether it's our CUPE folks or whether it's the ATU, we stand with all of our workers and with our communities. This is an attack on the citizens of Ontario, and we will stay on the strike lines until we get a fair collective agreement for our members, for our 2,200 members. We'll take some questions from the media.
Specifically, what are you looking for? You mentioned there's 3 sticking points at the bargaining table that you could have resolved. What are those 3 points?
So I'll defer that to the bargaining team.
So, thank you for the question. As everybody should know by now, contracting out language, more protection was one of the main items. Now, a lot of you are going to be surprised with my response. We worked on some language, we presented it to Metrolinx, and their response was wonderful. This is great. This is the greatest thing we've seen from you in 7 months. So why are we here today on strike? The other 2 items had to do with a commitment they kept giving us verbally. We want to give you more full-time employees and station attendants. So, well, we need that in writing. Their response was, well, it's a business plan. That's what we plan on doing. I said, well, we're here negotiating a contract. I think it would be wonderful if you put that in writing so we could go back to our members and tell them that you're committed to more full-time employees. The third item was the elimination of halftime. Gets a little complicated, but on certain crews, there's time in between where our members are paid half-time to sit with the vehicle. A lot of members are not happy because their days are made longer unnecessarily, and they're only paid half-time. So that was a big concern we heard from the members. So with these 3 items, we would have had a collective agreement, and I'm confident, I made it clear to Metrolinx, I'm confident that the membership will ratify this agreement. So that's the answer to your question. Why are we here today?
So when it comes to gap between a deal, it was a smaller gap, a big, it sounds like you were fairly close. It was a manageable.
I've been saying for weeks that I've never been involved in a collective agreement that was so close yet so far. There should have been a deal done this weekend. There's no doubt in my mind. We were ready to make a deal. Metrolinx was not. They were not bargaining in good faith. Sure, I can answer that, or Rob, would you like to answer that about the work? Go ahead, Rob.
The safety concerns are around the contractors. Our people, when they do the job, they're the skilled professionals. We have an amazing track record with regards to safety. The contractors, not so much. And that's the safety concerns that we raised in our press release.
Can you be more specific about what the language you're asking for when it comes to contracting out is those negotiations and what Metrolinx has not agreed to?
So actually we had drafted up some language, as I mentioned earlier, that the employer was happy with. So that wasn't really a sticking point anymore. So if our membership said we want to go on strike for better contracting out language, and we proposed something that the employer was happy with, and the other 2 items were agreed upon the day before, I'm still perplexed as to why they forced our members out on strike today. Well, we know the reason, but I'm frustrated as a negotiator. As a comment was made earlier, there should have been a negotiated deal. Now we're prepared to go back to the table. They've had their time to prepare the document that they couldn't do yesterday. So if they prepare the document that we all agreed upon, what it could look like, I think there could be an agreement within hours. I'm optimistic of that. We're willing to go back to the table tomorrow and end a strike that should have never happened.
Can you just speak to the last time we saw a strike involving these transit workers happen many years ago?
This local, there's never been a strike at Go Transit in its 40-year history. This is the first strike. And wouldn't you be suspicious of the timing of that?
What have you been hearing from members on the picket lines this morning?
Well, the members are angry. You can see yourselves. Is everybody angry?
Yeah! We need a fair deal.
Yeah.
Fair deal. Fair deal.
Any other questions from the media?
Fair deal.
Any other questions? Thank you for coming out. We appreciate your
All right,
coverage.
thanks for your time. All right. Good.
You want to keep it for your 11?
You want me to make a donation?
ATU! 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 I think we've got a pretty good gauge.